Hello my friends, my name is Gerdes and this is a daily brief. So we're going to start with the losses of the Russians in Ukraine: 830, 22 tanks, 47 armored combat vehicles, 67 vehicles and fuel tanks. So the tempo is still up. It's not where it has been, and I'll show you what I mean in just a little bit, but it's not as high as it has been. The big story here though is 450,000. Let's look at this chart again. They just passed 450,000 according to Ukrainian statistics. Russians off the battlefield, and that's pretty impressive because it passed 400,000 about 2 days before the 2-year mark. So that was about February 22nd, and if you look at the days between February 22nd and April 10, you see 47 days, which means that they've been at about 1,063 as an average over this since the 2-year mark. And so that is down to 830 is a reduction, but it's still hard fighting. And it's not just 830 losses for the Russians, it's still hard fighting for the Ukrainians, who are outgunned. Let's look at this. Defense intelligence from Great Britain. Russia continues to conscript soldiers each spring and autumn. The spring conscription commenced on April 1, 2024. Around 150,000 soldiers from 18 to 30 age group are to be conscripted this spring. So they're just going to make more and send more to slaughter, because the value of human life is not really that high to the Russians, which is consistent with the number conscripted previously. These conscripts will serve for 12 months in all branches of Russia's military forces, but are currently not employed in combat roles in Ukraine. Conscripts are employed in garrisons across Russia. In land units, they generally form a battalion separate from the battalion staffed by contract service soldiers. Some conscript soldiers likely serve in Russia adjacent to the Ukraine border in units providing border security. Russian forces in Ukraine are staffed by contract service soldiers and some reservists mobilized in late 2022. Conscript soldiers are commonly put under pressure to enlist as contract soldiers and would then be liable for service in Ukraine. There is likely to be some reluctance among Russian authorities to risk combat casualties among conscript soldiers, which would likely be unpopular. Casualties among volunteer soldiers are more tolerated by society. Russia seeks to recruit around 400,000 contract service personnel in 2024. This is to sustain its forces in Ukraine, which have suffered huge losses, and support its announced plans to increase the size of the armed forces to 1.32 million this year and 1.5 million subsequently. Now, the Ukrainians are working on this too, and this is what the Ukrainian draft law on mobilization looks like. The Verkhovna Rada has considering almost 4,300 amendments to the mobilization bill. I'd love to be able to get into that and see how that's working, because the Ukrainians have to mobilize as well in a much broader way. They're saying we don't need 500,000, maybe it's less than that. I don't know. I'm guessing here 350,000. I don't know. But only 300,000 of the million that are in the Ukrainian army now are actually at the front. The rest are in some kind of service roles. So we'll see how this all plays out. Okay, let's go to some major headlines here. Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant targeted by drones for the third day. I don't understand this. I'm scratching my head. Certainly Ukraine wouldn't be attacking, well, as far as I can see, certainly Ukraine wouldn't be attacking its own military or nuclear facility because it doesn't want another Chernobyl. It seems like Russia would be doing this as a false flag, trying to generate some kind of sympathy from the world or something, but I don't understand it. If you understand it, please put that in the comments below. I don't understand everything. Okay, Ukraine shoots down 14 out of 17 Russian drones, but Odessa still sustains damage. Yeah, they shot down 14 out of 17 drones. They shot down a couple of missiles, but things keep getting through, and it's pretty painful. Ukraine's battle to save Kharkiv from Putin's drones. It's not going well, and one of the things that's happening is Russia has really perfected the art of the double tap, and a double tap is simply that they hit, say, an apartment building, firemen rush to the aid, they come out and put everything out, and while they're putting things out, while they're rescuing people in the rubble, there is another missile timed to hit when the most firefighters and rescue workers are going to be there, so it kills as many of them as possible. It's a pretty barbaric way of doing business. Okay, if you want to know what it's really like, I'm going to turn the volume up, but the volume really doesn't matter that much. So you're seeing them get on the ground, and there's a reason. Okay, I'm going to turn the volume off and you can watch it again, giving the world an idea of everyday life in Kharkiv as the Russians destroy the cities with missiles, guided bombs, and daily massacres. Ukrainian football player publishes this video from football practice. So this is what they have to do during football practice because they're hearing this come in. Let's watch it again. It's simply unbelievable living in those kind of conditions. And yet, at the same time, while we're watching this, we see things like Joseph Borrell talking about it should be inconceivable that we were not able to provide 7 batteries, given that the Western armies have about 100 batteries of Patriot. He's right. There's just not the will within Europe. Now, I know I'm an American, and we have our own problems. We have this political infighting, so we're not demonstrating the will either. But yeah, there's just not the will. The Ukrainians want to fight. In fact, here's Zelensky. Zelensky was inspecting the Kharkiv fortifications, and just being there, just physically being there, is just running laps around whatever Putin may or may not have done. And it's just, yeah, there's such a contrast in leadership between these two men. Okay, just a few more things. A KA27 military helicopter in temporarily occupied Crimea was destroyed. This is good news. Here's the Kyiv Post talking about it and a little bit about the KA27. A Russian KA27 helicopter is reportedly destroyed in Crimea, as announced by Naval Forces of Ukraine spokesperson. Here's the quote: "Minus the Russian KA27 in Crimea, it was looking for something, it found it." Okay. According to the Crimean Wind Telegram channel, the Russian Black Sea Fleet employs these helicopters to search for Ukrainian naval drones and landing craft. So getting rid of them in order to be able to attack the naval fleet is probably a good idea. KA-27 is a Soviet-designed naval multi-purpose helicopter utilized for anti-submarine defense of the fleet across various ship classes. It possesses the capability to detect modern submarines and surface targets, transmit data to ships and shore points, and engage targets using onboard weapons. It's capable of detecting, tracking, and engaging submarines at depths up to 500 meters at speeds up to 75 kilometers per hour within search areas extending up to 200 kilometers from the base ship. Okay, so knocking one of those out of the sky is probably a good day. Last couple things: Ukrainian border guards down a quarter-ton Russian cluster bomb. So this had the wings on it. It's being sent as a glide bomb, and they actually clipped the wing and knocked it down before it could go off, and then they had to detonate it on the ground. Last little bit, thought this was funny, and we'll end with this. Ukrainian intelligence-affiliated hacker group said they managed to shut off 87,000 sensors and prevent a utility company from responding to accidents and emergency services. Of what? Of the Moscow sewage system. Well, that's going to be kind of a bad experience in Moscow, I would imagine, but we'll see how that all plays out. All right, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.